After a few glasses of wine, Francis said, "Why don't we all row across the Atlantic Ocean?" It's labelled the toughest rowing challenge in the world.
At 42, Helen Butters was a mum of two, living what many would call a normal life. Until Helen went from rowing 10 miles on a river to crossing the Atlantic Ocean with 3 fellow Yorkshire mums.
I think the worst moments on that boat was when BBC Breakfast followed our story. There was a man who actually tweeted in to say, "What do they think they're doing? They're going to have to be rescued."
Does anyone ever call you mad?
Yes.
They planned for 2.5 years, raised £120,000 and completed the 3,000-mile Atlantic Challenge, despite people saying they'd never make it. Their story became a best-selling book 4 months on board. Let's do this.
The key to happiness is that.
What can businesses learn from your experience of crossing the Atlantic? ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. So what's the story of Helen Butters?
My story is a constant work in progress, I would say. A very, very, I suppose my life was very much the norm, the recipe for life that people follow. And once I decided not to follow the normal recipe, that's when change happened, I guess, for me.
It's really powerful, that, isn't it? I guess my life was the norm, the stereotypical norm.
Yeah.
I'm adding connotations that might be wrong here, but maybe the boring, normal stuff until you made a decision.
Yes.
To change it.
Yes.
What led to that decision?
I would say, people would say midlife crisis. I always say midlife opportunity. And that came in the form of being probably 41, 42. I had 2 children. I was married, husband.
How old were the kids back then?
They were, I would say, Lucy was probably about 12. Henry was probably about 7 or 8.
Lucy and Henry, 7 or 8 and 12. Got it. The norm. Did you find yourself questioning yourself? Did you find yourself having a crisis or opportunity moment?
I'd lost who I was, because I think when you're a lot younger, you want to fit in. So we talk about having a number of layers. So when you're a child, we're very positive. We think anything is possible. And then the older we get and the knocks we get along the way, we lose that confidence and we lose who we really are. And I'd got to a point where, I hadn't been hugely academic, so there was kind of failure. I remember being 18 and making the decision of, should I go to London College of Fashion, which is what I wanted to do, and I didn't, because I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of not getting in. So I didn't do that. I took the easy route. I then met my husband, so I took on the role of wife. I then had children, took on the role of mother, ended up having 4 years out of the workplace looking after my children. So I was in this bubble of niceness, having coffees, going for lunch, doing all of that kind of, that bubble of niceness. And then I kind of got to a stage where I was actually watching I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And I was watching Melanie Sykes. And this story goes full circle, so remind me if I don't tell you the end of it. But I remember watching her. I was, as I said, I was about 41, 42, in this very, very comfortable life. However, it wasn't that comfortable. There were issues, there were stresses, there were strains, which I think if you are in that world of stresses and strains, sometimes that catapults you into making change. So I was watching I'm a Celebrity, watching her. She was my age. For some reason, I could relate to her. Even though she's a supermodel, she was like 6 foot gorgeous. So I could kind of relate to her. And I just thought, wow, she's beating all the men, all the challenges. She's beating the young people. She really inspired me. And at that point, I can remember thinking, I want to do something that will challenge me physically and mentally, but I didn't know what that was at that time. And I remember planting that seed in my head, and I didn't know what it was. But what I do know now is if you do plant a seed, your brain subconsciously looks for opportunity. And that's what it did. So I would imagine, I don't know, a couple of months later, I bumped into Francis and Nikki, who were my rowing colleagues, outside the school gates on a Saturday morning, because the kids went on a Saturday morning. And I said, "Oh, what are you two doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're learning to row." And I went, I want to do that. And that's because I'd planted that seed. So for me, that was going to really challenge me.
And mental
yeah,
challenge.
and it's really hard. It's harder than it looks. So I started rowing with them. And then we met Jeanette, and we all got in a boat together. And then for probably around 2 years, every Saturday morning, we met. We rowed probably 10 miles up and down the river, not very well. And then obviously the opportunity happened because of that. So I think for me, it was my aha moment was watching that program, and it's also about following your gut instinct, and that's what I did.
Melanie Sykes, eh?
Yes.
You want to say thank you to her now?
So what happened then was,
starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? The good days you had. And the bad. You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today. Visit actioncoach.co.uk.
obviously we wrote a book. And I got a DM from Melanie Sykes in my Instagram, and I remember thinking, is this really her? And she does voice notes when she sends messages, so you know it's her because she's got
unless
that distinctive.
It's AI these days.
Yeah, unless it's AI, but I don't think it was back then. So anyway, she sent me this message and said, "I've just read your book, and I can't believe that I inspired you to do this." And she said, "You've now inspired me because I'm going through, obviously she's realised she's had her challenges and she's got through those. And she just said, you've now inspired me because I've read your book." So the whole thing had gone full circle, which was weird.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge a couple of things here. So for the female audience that's in a similar situation to you that's listening right now, of course, this is clearly resonating for them if they're in a similar situation. But even for the husbands of wives that were in a similar situation to you, like mine right now, my wife has just turned 44, and she's going to watch this, and you're going to be speaking straight to her.
Yeah.
For a challenge, physical and mental. It's so obvious when she say it out loud. But equally, there's awareness for everybody else in here, and there's more to this story. So an opportunity did come. What was the opportunity?
So we all went to a rowing dinner. So obviously, as 4 people, we became really good friends.
You were all mums?
We're all mums. We didn't know Jeanette. I kind of knew Francis and Nikki because our kids were in the same year. But we're all very, very different people. So when you meet us all together, you think, wow, we're all very different, which then turned out to be our superpower. So we went to the rowing dinner one night, and after a few glasses of wine, Francis said, "I've seen this race. It's called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. Why don't we all row across the Atlantic Ocean?" And up until that point, all we'd been doing very badly was rowing up and down the River Ouse. And in fact, we entered a rowing race and got disqualified because we were endangering our lives and other people's, apparently. So at that point, we weren't very good rowers. But we loved it because that was our, what I call thin place. I don't know if you've ever heard of people's thin places. And it's where people, everybody's very different, but your thin place is somewhere where you can kind of connect to nature. You can kind of connect to yourself. And and they're quite powerful places. So being on the river every Saturday morning, come rain or shine or snow, was our place, which was like our therapy, really.
Obviously, you're making me think of a happy place, but
Yes.
we're talking about something slightly different to a happy place. This is where you're connecting to yourself and purpose in some way, is it?
Yes. So obviously, we're all got busy lives. We've all got issues. We've all got problems. But for us, meeting up, that friendship, and doing something on water, which is a very kind of spiritual element anyway, was my saviour, shall I say?
And there's a bit. I mean, does anyone ever call you mad for wanting to cross the Atlantic on a rowing boat with four mums basically that got disqualified from a race?
Yes, on the river.
We're going to now cross the Atlantic.
Yes. It was just so weird, because when Francis suggested it, all of us just said yes immediately. And for me, it just felt the right thing to do on so many different levels. I would say it took us 2.5 years to plan. So I was probably about 41, 42. And it just felt like the right thing to do. And even though logically, we had 2 children each at home, we all worked. Two of them were the main breadwinners in the family. There was everything to say, no, we can't do this, because we've got children, we've got jobs, we've got mortgages, we've got bills to pay. But we all just believed that we could do it. And I don't know why I believed I could do it. I just did. So it was about trusting your gut instinct against all odds. And lots of people didn't think we were going to do it. And lots of people wanted to disassociate from us, because they thought, well, they're going to fail, and we don't want to be around people who fail, which what we all know now is, if you don't fail, you haven't tried hard enough.
The people that disassociate, with their friends, with their colleagues, with their connections, with the acquaintances, with the family? It
wasn't family. It was people like our rowing club. People in our rowing club. I don't know if it was because it's there's a lot of men, and I don't know if it was a jealousy thing or what, but they just they weren't very supportive.
Yeah.
Even the school wasn't very supportive, because I don't think they wanted to associate with failure, which is really, a silly thing to do. Because for us, even if we hadn't got to Antigua, I would have been proud to have tried and got to the start line. That, for me...
Where did it start? So it finished in Antigua, beautiful place to finish.
Yes.
Where did it start?
So the race it starts in La Gomera in the Canary Islands, and the race is 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean to Antigua. And at that point, I think there'd only been maybe 100 women had ever done it. I actually went back last year to La Gomera for the first time, and when we did the race, I think there was about 8 women out of 26 boats. When I went back last year, there were 33 women. So there's been a huge increase in women actually doing the challenge. So yes, it's labelled the toughest rowing challenge in the world, and it is dangerous. It is very scary. But for us, we just, as a team, we just believed that we could do it. And we did plan 2.5 years so that we could eliminate risk, really, and make sure that we'd done all the training. Even on when BBC Breakfast followed our story, talking about people who didn't believe us, there was a man who actually tweeted in to say, I've just watched these 4 women on BBC Breakfast. What do they think they're doing? They're going to have to be rescued. Blah, 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 blah. But if that
did you ever reach out to him?
Alan, he was called. So if that had been 4 men sitting on that sofa, nobody would have said that. So,
I don't know.
But I don't know. But in a way, that kind of inverted sexism kind of worked in our favour, because we did get a lot of publicity, which meant that we could raise a lot of money for our charity.
What year was it?
We started December 2015 and we got to Antigua in February 2016.
So it's like nine years ago.
9 years, yeah.
How long did it take?
So it took us 67 days, 5 hours and 2 minutes.
How many seconds?
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's all the Guinness World Records and things, so it's very, it's very precise. But yeah, it took us 67 days, 5 hours and 2 minutes to get there.
What was it like when you could see Antigua like a mile away or however far?
It was amazing, because obviously for us being in we're on the Atlantic Ocean for that length of time, it's a very extreme challenge, and we felt closer to space than we did land for a lot of it.
This episode is sponsored by ClickFunnels. You're only one funnel away from impacting millions. Head over to clickfunnels.com/bizx for more information. Now back to the podcast.
In fact, Tim.
Well, you were closer to space than land.
Yeah, we were. We felt that's where we were. So when we first saw the lights of Antigua, we thought, God, what's that over there? And then we realised it was land, and it was an amazing moment. But obviously, we hadn't got there yet. And what
How far in the distance it was the horizon?
Probably quite a number of miles. I don't know the exact plus? Miles.
5.
Definitely more than that.
They reckon if you stand on the shoreline and you look out just on foot, it's 7 miles to the horizon.
Oh, really?
If you stood there.
Yeah.
Now, if there's a mountain on land, of course, that's more than 7 miles away because it's not the horizon.
It was at that point when we were about, I don't know, we were quite close to Antigua, and we were told to come in daylight. So we had to put our power anchor down. And I was fighting against that because I just wanted to get there. And I knew the reason that they wanted us to come in daylight was because BBC Breakfast had travelled there and were going to film us coming in. So I was like, no, I just want to get there. But anyway, I lost that battle. But actually,
3v1.
Yeah. But actually, that time that we had when we put our power anchor out, Francis's phone started to work, and the amazing messages that then started to ping in, because if you can imagine, for 67 days, zombies could have taken over the world and we wouldn't have known. So all these messages started to ping in, and that was our time to actually think, well, this is coming to an end now, and grieving that whole 2.5 years, which people sort of forget when they're doing a massive project. Sometimes they forget that actually at the end there's a grieving process because it's finished. And I suffered with an adrenaline hangover at the end, which is another story. But that time where we were sitting on the boat in the middle of the Atlantic, it's quite scary closer to land because the waves are bigger. And all these messages started to come in on Francis's phone from around the world, people we didn't know. I sent a message to my children because they weren't going to be in Antigua, just to say I'm here before they'd heard it from anybody else. But that's where we really appreciated the power of communication and how words are so powerful because they can motivate you and they're free. So if they're used wisely, words are really, really powerful. And those words just really raised us up. And we were like, oh, my God, look at all of this support from people. And it was so actually, I'm glad that we sat out for a few hours and then rowed in during the daylight because we had that time together.
Was it upsetting? Was it emotional?
It was very emotional, and we didn't expect that. So I think when you're doing an extreme sport like that, you're on adrenaline because, you know, you don't know from one second to another what's going to happen. You could capsize at any moment. You could, you know.
Did the boat ever capsize?
No, other boats did. I always say we were really lucky, but I think no, we weren't lucky.
You planned.
We worked hard at keeping that boat, so it wasn't.
Did he get close
to the word? Oh yes, I remember standing up one day, and the boat just kind of tipped like this, and then I thought, God, you know, we could have easily gone over. That was my fear, but everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. But for us, that made us stronger as a team. We learned so much more. I think the worst moments on that boat was when we lost our auto helm. We burnt out about 3 auto helms because the boat goes so slowly.
What's
an
auto helm?
Auto helm basically follows the GPS. So it follows the route. So it kind of, it's a bit like an electronic tiller.
Right.
We lost that, so we had to use 2 pieces of string and a compass to for about 1,000 miles. And we had a time where we took it in turns to hold the rudder. So we were looking at the GPS in the tiny little cabin, and you can imagine the power of the waves. I mean, in the middle of the Atlantic, they're like 40-foot waves, and we're trying to hold this rudder to stop it, A, from coming out, but B, from knocking us off course, which would then increase the risk of capsize. So they were some of the hardest moments, really. At night time, everything went wrong, it seemed, and you couldn't see
every night.
Not every night, but if anything, if the boat went off course, or something broke, it was always at night, which made it even worse. And there was 12 hours of darkness. I don't know why I didn't think there would be, but it was a lot of time rowing in the dark, because when you do that challenge, you've got to keep the boat moving. So you work in pairs. So you have 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day. And we mixed up our pairs so we didn't get into cliques, because that can happen.
Did you have arguments? Yes,
we did. And we worked really hard, actually, because we knew that doing this race, the risk of falling out is very high. Looking and talking to other teams. So we worked really hard at having values. We were very honest with each other, saying we are going to annoy each other on this, we are going to. So how are we going to manage that? So we did have those very honest discussions, which a lot of teams don't do. And then they end up falling out and having a really bad... Can you imagine being in the middle of the ocean in a tiny space and not wanting to be with those people anymore? So our aim was always to get across as friends. It wasn't to win. It was to get across as friends. So our main value was stepping on that boat with the mindset of looking after each other before ourselves, which meant that I knew I had 3 people looking after me and not one person looking after me. And that change of mindset made a massive difference to our journey.
It's kind of the opposite of put your own oxygen mask on first, that, isn't it?
Yeah, but...
I wonder if businesses can learn from that, your team is looking after everyone else.
Yeah, it definitely stops conflict if you have that mindset of looking after each other. And I also now go to a Buddhist meditation on a Tuesday, So I'm not religious, I'm not a Buddhist, but I love the power of meditation, but also the key to happiness, which I've learned through all of that over the last couple of years, is that if you actually don't self-cherish and you're thinking about other people, that's where you find your happiness. And I honestly, truly believe that if you're looking after you and thinking about you constantly, you're not going to be happy. But if you're actually thinking about other people and trying to make them happy, that in turn makes you happier. Yeah.
Okay, so you got into Buddhism, and I'll bring that up actually in a second. You know, when you were crossing the ocean, did you ever get in? Did you ever go for a swim?
I didn't, no.
You didn't get in the sea?
No. So basically, at one point, there's a safety yacht for the whole fleet, and it came to visit us about a week before we reached Antigua. And I remember us sitting on our boat.
Well, you didn't see it for all of the other time?
No,
60 days?
No, because it could be 2 weeks away, because it's basically following the fleet. So if something happened, we'd probably be more likely to be rescued by a passing ship than that.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, because it's...
How many passing ships did you pass?
Probably not that many. We passed more on the North Sea when we rode across the North Sea. But no, we didn't see many ships. Apparently there was a cruise liner that went past us that basically saw us.
But none of you saw it?
No, I didn't see the cruise liner, but we did see some ships, but they didn't come too close to us. But if something had happened, if we'd capsized or if the boat had set on fire and we had to evacuate the boat, then you just, call a passing ship, and they have to come and rescue you.
How close is a passing ship, though?
Well, it could be a few days away. It could be,
come and rescue you. You have to wait
away.
2 days.
Yeah.
Did you see any sharks?
We did. So that's why I didn't go in. So basically, the safety yacht came to visit us about a week before we got to Antigua, because we saw this boat. We thought, oh, who's that? And then we realised it was the safety yacht had come to see us. And the skipper on the safety yacht, we hadn't seen anybody for weeks and weeks and weeks. So when he just dived in and swam over to us, and we were like, oh my God, we've seen a man, and it's amazing. And he just said to us, your boat is full of crap underneath it. And that's why you're going so slow. You need to get in and you need to clean under the boat. So Nikki and Francis decided that they were going to go in and clean the boat, and me and Jeanette were on shark watch, because when you clean the boat, the stuff that's underneath the boat is food for Dorados, apparently, and then obviously they're food for sharks. So we were on shark watch whilst they went in and tried to clean under the boat.
How long did it take?
They did a really good job, actually. It didn't take that long.
10 minutes? 5 minutes?
Maybe half an hour.
Half an hour.
And then they climbed back in. Obviously, they were tied on. They climbed back in, and then we doubled our knottage. So if I was ever going to do it again, which I'm not, I would definitely. That was one of the things that we failed to do that we should have done, because we doubled our knottage. And in fact, we were going so fast that everybody had to jump on planes and get to Antigua, because we just went whoosh. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
But that was an amazing moment when the safety yacht came, and we were, it was an amazing moment to actually see real people.
But you'd seen sharks. Did you see any whales?
We saw, oh yes, yes. So we had an amazing moment and we've got some video of this, which I show when I do my talk, which is this huge whale was coming towards us, and we were kind of excited but quite scared, because if it was going to, it could chop the boat in half. It was absolutely huge, but it came with its baby calf, and the calf came closer and closer. Mum stayed away. The calf was getting closer and closer, circling the boat for quite a long time. And at that point, I think we were all going a bit bonkers, because we were all going, oh, it knows we're missing our children and it's bringing its baby to us. And so that was an amazing moment. We saw loads of dolphins. We saw turtles that were swimming faster than we were rowing. We saw weird birds that looked like mini dinosaurs. And yeah, it was a privilege to be in that world for sure.
Pterodactyls over the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, a couple of things I've wrote down there. You know, take 2.5 years of planning. That's relevant for business.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate the power of communication. You know, when you said you got all of these messages in, words are free. It's very powerful and motivational. Yeah. Buddhism and meditating that you're doing now. Let's go to the power of planning, actually, first of all. What can businesses learn from your experience of crossing the Atlantic?
So if we hadn't have planned, we probably wouldn't have got to the start line. So we knew that we had four people. We knew right from the word go that we were... So Jeanette's husband thought we were going in 6 months' time, which if we'd have done that, we wouldn't have got to the start line and we wouldn't have achieved our goal. So we knew planning was key. We knew that with the four of us, we were all very different. We all had very different skill sets. So we shared out tasks in order to get to the start line. So we did a proper plan, proper business plan, really. We needed to raise £120,000 to get to the start line. We needed to learn various skills to get to the start line.
Is that what it costs to cross the ocean?
Yeah, so with the race fees, with your boat, with all the courses that you have to do, it's around about £120,000. So you can imagine 4 women, mums, going to corporate businesses saying, we're going to do this. They're just going to think, no, you're not. So it was really tough. So we knew that what we had to do was buy the boat early, so that we could go with a boat and say we are very serious about doing this. So we all had our different skill sets. We all went off and. So I did communications and PR for it. Jeanette did actually have a boat. So we said, right, well, you're the most boaty out of all of us. So it's your job to source a boat builder and sort out the boat. Frances is a lawyer. So she had connections with businesses. So it was her job to try and find us some corporate sponsors. And Nikki was super organised, so she organised the food and did all on
What kind of food did you eat during 67 days?
Yeah, so we had to take. It was like frozen food that you add boiling water to, very high calories. So as you can imagine, we're rowing for 15 hours a day. We need to eat a lot of calories. So there's lots on the market.
What kind of frozen food?
So like chili con carne.
Okay.
All of that kind of stuff.
And you just boil water.
So it was my job to boil the water. So we had to be very efficient.
Something like you have when you're camping.
Yes. So it was my job. In fact, I think I had the most dangerous job on that boat, because if you've seen footage, the boat's just going like this. And I had to boil the water every day.
Seawater?
It's on board, you have a water maker. So it turns the seawater into drinking water. And when that broke for a while, we had to hand pump our water when we weren't rowing. And it was my job to boil it on a stove and then decant it into a flask, because we have to be very efficient. So we can't be stopping every 5 minutes to boil water. So I just did it once.
So you had chili con carne and lasagna every day.
Yeah, and probably not very hot either. But you've got to take...
You're not bothered though, are you?
No, oh God, no. You've got to take a percentage of food that's called wet food. So that's in case you don't have any water. So that's like baked beans and sausage. So you can eat that cold. Do you
love baked beans?
I do love baked beans and
Amazing.
sausage, but I was obviously very seasick for the first 5 days. So I didn't eat anything other than drink this ultra fuel. So that's where planning comes in. So part of our planning was actually rowing across the North Sea. And if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have learned that I was very seasick and how to minimise me not being sick to not row across the Atlantic. So when we did the North Sea, I was very seasick and I couldn't row as much as I wanted to because I was really ill. I took the toilet bucket, so they didn't have the toilet. There were so many things we learned from doing that. So when we got onto the Atlantic, we'd done some research on this stuff called ultrafuel, which if you drink that and you're sick, but you drink it, if you can keep everything down for 6 minutes, your body absorbs everything it needs. So I could keep rowing on the Atlantic, even though I was throwing up. And there was a team of Americans who were on the same race as us, who were out to win. They had a coach, they were very professional. But what they didn't realise was that one of their team members was horrendously seasick, and they only realised that when they got to La Gomera. So they were panicking like mad when they got to La Gomera because he was very seasick. And in fact, they only lasted 5 days. He had to be rescued from the race. And then another of their teammates was scared. The first 5 days is like a baptism of fire. So then his another rowing person on their boat, on the American boat, was scared. So because the safety yacht had come to take the seasick person off because he was delusional at that point and it was dangerous, the other man decided to leave because he was scared. So that boat with the 2 Americans, there was only two men, and they did get to Antigua, but with just 2 of them rowing a 4-man boat with all the kit for 4 men. So that was another advantage of the planning. So yes, we had to plan in order to raise the money, but we also had to plan to learn about rowing an ocean boat. We'd never done it before. So we went to Essex. So we took every opportunity that came our way. And Charlie Pitcher, who designed our boat, organised a trip to Essex, a weekend. So we took our boat there. So we got her early. We took her there. We met 5 other teams, one being Jason Fox and 4 of his marine friends, who again, when we walked in the room, they looked at us as if to say, what are you doing here? But by the end of that weekend, I think he mentions us in his book. He said that they had their arses handed to them on a plate by 4 Yorkshire mums because we actually beat them in one of the races. So once we'd done that, we thought, well, we can do anything. We can do anything now. And that kind of helped the building blocks of our belief system, which is then resulted in us deciding to row across the North Sea, which another 2 Americans had tried to do the week before, had failed and said, don't do it. It's the busiest shipping channel in the world. But of course, because our belief system was we can do this, we've planned, we've done everything. We did do that. And
how long did that take?
That took us about 75 hours. We were being filmed by a BBC documentary to do that. I was supposed to ring the producer before we got into the marina in Holland. But because I was throwing up and hallucinating, I obviously didn't ring her. And then by the time we got into the marina, because we'd made an error of not putting our last waypoint in, and we actually saw Jason Fox and his team were doing that as well, so we actually followed them in. We would have beaten them again if we'd actually put the right waypoint in.
You let them win.
We let them win. And we got into the marina in Holland, and then I phoned Kat and said, I'm so sorry, I forgot to ring you. And she swore at us, and we had to row back out and row back in because she needed to film us rowing back in. And then we climbed over the Marines' boats. They had sick all over their boats, so they were exactly the same as us. But we learned so much from doing that, which then resulted in our success then doing the main thing, which was rowing across the Atlantic. So Nikki looked after me over those 5 days by basically making my ultrafuel, handing it to me when I'd finished rowing, and she kept me going until I was fine.
There's a lot in the planning there. I mean, there's something in this for businesses as well. You know, when you're doing the big plan for a big dream or to achieve something big, break it into a smaller goal first.
Yes.
Do a little bit
Yeah.
and learn a lot from that you
Yeah. can
then apply into the big thing. And the other thing, what you said was the first week was a baptism of fire, and that could be relatable in a business, because you might do a marketing plan that first week.
Yeah.
Of, launching the campaigns, getting it underway, getting something off the ground. Might be the equivalent of the baptism of fire, and where most people give up. This catches most people out.
Yes,
So,
and I think if you accept... So I knew that I was going to be sick, and there is nothing worse than being seasick. Nothing. And I knew that was going to happen. But because I accepted that it was going to be really tough, and Jeanette's husband suffers with seasickness, and he had a really bad experience sailing across the Atlantic. I remember him saying to me, it's going to be really awful. You're going to throw up until you can't throw up anymore. But then you'll start to feel better. You'll start to feel hungry. And I accepted it was going to be really tough. And if you accept something's going to be tough, it makes it easier.
It's a really powerful point, isn't it? Definitely for small businesses that are growing and they've got some dreams ahead. A couple of other things you mentioned is Buddhism. So now you're into Buddhism.
Yeah.
What's your definition of meditation?
I'm not very good at it.
All right, that's not a definition. That's a limiting belief. Okay, so
I'm accepting I'm not good at it. So meditate. So my definition of meditation is basically, for me, it's a non-negotiable tool in order to keep me focused. So it's a focus.
Right. It's a tool to keep you focused. All right, and it involves calming the whole body down, total stillness, emptying the mind, being at one with your body.
And focusing on whatever you're meditating on. So for me, I think, looking back at, when you talk about what's my story, I think authentically, I am attracted to extreme things. I think I've always been attracted. So for me, I didn't want to, just row up and down the river. I wanted to row across the Atlantic Ocean. I did another challenge a couple of years ago where, I'm an ambassador for Maggie's. I didn't just cycle from Maggie's Leeds to Maggie's Oxfordshire. I wanted to cycle from Maggie's Leeds to Maggie's Barcelona. So for me, I'm always extreme. And the reason I got into Buddhism was I listened to a podcast with Lee Mack called I Can't Believe It's Not Buddha. And I was really curious and interested in Buddhism and meditation. And so, yes, I could have gone and done some meditation in my village hall, but no, I had to go to a Buddhist temple. I had to go to a Buddhist temple. So,
it's commitment, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You put yourself there; it makes you think differently.
Yeah, so. I just think for me, it just has to be, everything has to be extreme. So I went to so I did that, and basically I really enjoyed it. And lots of people go to meditation because something terrible's happened, or something terrible's happened, and the Buddhist monk who we know really well now keeps saying that, and I keep saying, don't say that, because I got into this because I was curious about what you believe and how you live your modern Buddhist life. I'm just curious about it. That's why I'm here. Nothing terrible has happened, but for me it's a non-negotiable for my mental health. So basically I exercise for my mental health every day, and I basically meditate because I'm not consistent with it. So I have to go on a Tuesday, and that's my hour and a half where I practice meditation.
With fellow Buddhists.
Yes.
What would you say to people that think meditation is fluffy nonsense?
I would say just it's very powerful, and I think in this modern life, and especially in business, I think it's a really powerful tool to reconnect. Because sometimes when you're in something, when you're in a business, when you're in a project, you can't see the trees from the wood from the trees. And I think sometimes, if you go for a walk at lunchtime, some problem that you've been trying to sort out at your desk and you can't see a way around it, by simply standing up and going for a walk, changes how your brain works, and you can often come up with a solution. And I think meditation for me is just a tool that everybody would find of value, because if you are in a highly stressful situation, you go into panic mode and then you can't think straight. So I think everybody needs to be in, you talk about your comfort zone, your stretch zone, your panic zone. And I'm a lifestyle coach. I'm not a business coach, I'm a life coach. So we talk about where people are in that circle. And if you're continually in your panic zone, then you're not going to perform as well. Your cortisone levels are going to be sky high, which we know that's not healthy, and you're not going to perform well. So by introducing meditation and Buddhism and learning how to find inner peace and happiness and contentment, just helps with stress levels, I think. So if you were kind of relating this to the business world.
Yeah. Well, what's the biggest benefit that you feel when you walk out of that 90 minutes Buddhist retreat?
I'm really tired. It tires me out, but it puts me in a very positive frame of mind. Okay. And I love learning about what I've learned. And it just makes me a more contented person. And I would imagine before that I was always kind of striving for the next thing, or one of the things that the ocean taught me was when you're in an extreme environment out of your comfort zone for a long time, that's when you do find your true self. So you can't pretend to be anybody else when you're out of your comfort zone. And that's when you can then connect to your gut instinct. And if you're authentic and connect to your gut instinct, you're more successful. When you're trying to pretend to be somebody else, you're never going to be successful, because people won't relate to you, they won't buy into you. So going back to Melanie Sykes, the reason why I related to her so well was because she was being her authentic self. And for me, I find that I'm my most successful when I'm being me and I'm authentic. And I think doing my meditation once a week brings me back down to being me again. And I think that's why it's so powerful in business, in sales. I mean, people will buy from people, won't they, if they relate to you.
Be me. 2 words, 4 letters. Very powerful. As is this, though, finding you find your true self when you're exposed out of your comfort zone for a prolonged period of time. Absolutely love that. Got a few other quick questions to ask you here. What's been the hardest lesson that you've had to learn in life?
Probably the hardest lesson I've had to learn is probably being a mother.
What's the lesson in being a mother?
I think in the early days when I was a mother, again, it's probably not being me, not being patient, not living in the moment, I think, for me, is one of the hardest lessons I've learned, which is another reason why I do meditation, because that's the one thing that I find really difficult to do, is live in the moment. Because, again, that's another way of being focused.
Hardest lesson is being patient and living in the moment. So if you could master one skill instantly, would it be that?
It would be living in the moment naturally.
Living in the moment naturally, folks. Did you hear that? So if Helen could master one skill instantly, that would be the one that you chose.
That's actually my goal for 2025.
All right, so not quite instantly. She's going to do it over a year.
It's going to it's again what I am very much. I think everybody's a work in progress. I'll be a work in progress till I'm in the ground. But for me, if I can live in the so if you spoke to my friends, one of the things that irritates them about me would be that I've always got my phone out. I'm not 100% focused on them.
Right.
I'm thinking about the next thing. I'm not looking around me, which I did on the boat because I had no distraction. I had no phone. I didn't have any distraction, and I was living in the moment, which is when I got clarity.
Oh, powerful, isn't it? When
Yeah.
you live in a moment, when
You
you
get
live in the moment,
clarity.
you get clarity.
You do.
It's powerful.
You do. And when you're out of your comfort zone, that's when you get clarity as well. So when we were very lucky that we got honorary doctorates from York St John University, and we had to do a speech to the students. And I remember telling them all to don't follow life's recipe. Go and do something. If you're not sure what you want to do, go do something. Get out of your comfort zone, because when you're out of your comfort zone, you'll get clarity, and then you'll know what you want to do. I think people have to be very brave to not follow, like I was talking about, life's recipe. And my children are a prime example of not following life's recipe and being very happy and very content and very successful.
Is that through your encouragement?
Well, everybody used to say that to me because obviously my kids were very young and I had to make a decision on, do I leave them for 3 months and go and do a dangerous thing, or do I stay at home and look after them? And I was very clear in my own head that I wanted them to see mum doing something for herself, and also that wasn't just looking after them all the time. And I wanted them to see me doing something. And I'm really pleased I did that, because I involved them in the 2.5 years of planning. They met some amazing people. When we rowed across the North Sea, they came with us and they met all the amazing rowers who are amazing, inspirational people. The army people with no legs who were rowing, they met all of them. And at a very young age, they absorbed all of their positive energy. And everybody, and it's only recently that they've both actually said to me, actually, yeah, that did give us that belief and confidence in ourselves. And both of them have not followed the blueprint of life, and they've made things happen for themselves at a young age. And I'm really proud of them, actually, because they haven't followed the trodden path.
What's the biggest lie that people believe about success, in your opinion?
That it's attached to things. I think people think that, and I was like that before the row. It was, what car am I driving? What house do I live in? And because I was in this bubble of niceness, I was with people who had better cars than me, bigger houses than me.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
And I was very miserable. And then I knew that I had to go back to work because I was miserable. So I think that's that success doesn't have to translate into physical attachments. And I think when I came back from the row, I was a very different person. And I remember waiting for Henry in the school grounds, and he came out, and I said, God, I've been listening to these mums, and they're talking about where they're going and what they're doing and driving. They all drive the same cars and they all wear the same clothes. And he said, Mum, that was you. And I went, yeah, and it was me, Henry. So I think saying yes to this adventure definitely for me was a transformational thing, being on that water and being out of my comfort zone. So what I've learned now is that success is freedom. And for me now, it's not how much money do I earn, it's the the goal is having my overheads low so I don't have to earn as much money. And that's very easy for me to say. I am married to, someone who's successful, and, I've never struggled, and it's very easy for me to sit here and say all of this when there's lots of people in very different situations. But yes, it's not about what you've got. That's not success for me anymore.
Saying yes to the adventure changed your life, yeah? I wonder if that's the same for all of the listeners right now. I mean, whatever the adventure might be, press the yes button.
Yeah. And for us, again, we were very lucky that, we wrote our book, and one of the byproducts of our row, which we didn't plan, all we wanted to do was go on an adventure. And an adventure can be anything that's out of the norm. It doesn't have to be rowing across the Atlantic. It's just something that's not your norm. That's how you could describe an adventure. I think Frances just wanted some time away from work. I think that was her trigger.
Is Frances the lawyer?
Frances is the lawyer, and she was the one who came up with the idea. So I think for her, she just wanted some time off.
Were you all similar age, midlife crisis scenarios?
Midlife opportunity.
Yes, thanks for the correction. You did say that earlier on. Okay, so your book is called Four Mums in a Boat.
Yes.
Now, if there was a movie about Helen Butters, not Four Mums, Helen Butters.
Yeah.
What would the title of the movie be?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question.
Well, come on. Let's play with it.
Follow your gut. The movie would be the power of following your gut. I think for me, that's what I do it now. My kids do it now. I'm very in tune with what feeling and what feels right. And if I follow that, good things always happen. I've done lots of things whereby, I've done things for free and thought, it feels right. I'll do this for free. And then amazing things have come on the back of it. And even deciding to row across the Atlantic, if I just said no to that, I would have really regretted that, because it's opened up so many doors. And for us, the byproduct of doing this, like I said before, we just wanted to have an adventure, and there was an opportunity, and we knew that we believed in each other. But what we talk about now is, what's your ocean? So everybody has their own oceans, and it's about finding what you want to do.
You said you'd have regretted it if you'd have said no. Do you have any regrets in life?
Yes, I regret not going to London College of Fashion.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. When I was 18.
Because of fear of failure.
Fear of failure. I remember the moment like it was yesterday, sitting in the library, looking at the course and thinking, I'm too scared to do it.
Okay, so cast yourself back to that moment when you're remembering it. And you're looking at your young self when you're 18.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to say one sentence to that young girl. What are you going to say?
Just do it. I think for me, I would say to that girl, failure is a good thing. So you've got nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose.
Go for it.
Yeah, definitely. And that came from a lack of confidence, for sure, with me at 18. A lack of confidence, which then I managed to build up over the years. But yeah.
I like the title of your movie. Maybe we should call the podcast that one. All right. So if the audience is to remember one thing from this conversation, what should it be?
It would be just to have a go. Just have a go. Like I've said before, the biggest thing for me was, I know it's quite cheesy, but it was the journey. It wasn't reaching Antigua. That wasn't for me the highlight. It was the people I met along the way, the things I learned along the way, the positive people who I met, absorbing all their positive energy. So for me, it's about just having a go. A few years ago, I tried to climb up Mont Blanc. And I got to about 300 meters off the top or something, and I got dehydrated, and I didn't make it to the top. And what really surprised me was I wasn't disappointed, because I was proud that I'd had a go. And I think for me, that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, is just have a go. And if you haven't failed, it means you just haven't tried hard enough. So it's just have a go at something.
What a powerful lesson that is. What I realised, I thought I was going to be disappointed. And I wasn't. I was proud. I was
proud that I got to as far as that, as far as I got. And I think a few years ago, I would have been gutted. And my friend who was with me was gutted. She was like, but no, I was, well, I've made it this far, got no yen to do it again. I've enjoyed the experience up to now, and I've had a go.
Look, there's been so many things that you've said. I'm just going to highlight a few of my favourite moments. Breaking the norm, what you said at the start, that is so important, to break the norm. You did that at age 41 in the midlife opportunity.
Yes.
I love when you go find your true self when you're out of your comfort zone for a prolonged period of time. Very, very powerful. As in, when you live in the moment, you get clarity. Except it will be tough as well. Now, but your movie, the name of the movie, that's one of my favourite bits. Follow your gut.
Well, the book has been bought by a movie company.
Next you're going to be in Hollywood. You're going to be next. You're going to be in Hollywood.
Well, it takes a long time, doesn't it, for these things to happen? But yeah, maybe the rights were bought quite a long time ago. But
base the next Mission Impossible on this one.
Yeah, maybe.
Mission Impossible. 4 mums from
Follow
York.
your dream. Yeah, follow your dream.
What's been your favourite part of the conversation?
I think being asked questions. I like being asked questions and thinking on my feet, actually, because I just don't know what you're going to ask me. But I think for me, I think there is a lot of synergy between doing an adventure, an extreme adventure, and business. And that's what I've learned over the years of doing keynote speeches and business workshops and all the rest of it. There's so many learnings, and it's an interesting story. So people listen to it. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed reliving that adventure, which seems like a dream now, I have to say.
It is a dream, and you're an inspiration, Helen Butters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.